I don't want to attribute it all to just sheer luck, because I think we do that too often. I think, well, it's just lucky, right? But no, you work for what you want. You keep your mind open to opportunity.
Welcome to Vet Life Reimagined. My guest today is someone I have admired for a long time. You've probably seen Dr. Ellen Lowery's name before. She worked with Hill's Pet Nutrition for 23 years and helped create some of the diets like Dental Diet, Hill's TD. She loves science and is an amazing leader. You'll learn about her journey of leadership, including becoming hospital director of Purdue right before the global pandemic, and what she did to build trust and a thriving hospital team. Dr. Lowery gave a lot of fun stories and wisdom in this episode, so on to the conversation. So when did you know that you even wanted to get into veterinary medicine?
Well, I was one of those that knew from a very young age. I mean, I can pinpoint it to about first or second grade. I can't remember exactly which, but driven by a couple of things. One, like many of us, I just have a great compassion for animals. And so I was, that child that was always bringing home whatever stray I found, even though I didn't often get to keep them. But I remember, and this is the funny part of the story, and that in about first or second grade, my teacher asked us to write a list of, what we wanted to do when we grew up, right? And always being the people pleaser, I thought, does she want the real thing or does she want the, made up thing? And so I think my first choice was Cinderella and my second choice was a veterinarian. And so, now I always joke and say, I'm kind of living the dream, it just feels like I got what I wanted to do. And so I just knew that I never wavered from wanting to be a veterinarian. And then as I got older and, really interested in science and math and medicine, and it really, clicked. And so it was just one of those things with me. Once I stated that's what I wanted to do, that's what I pursued.
Nice. And so you went to vet school. What was vet school like for you? And did you have an idea of what you wanted to do after vet school going in? Did that change at all?
It absolutely did change. So veterinary school, I loved veterinary school, but it was hard. I put myself through school, undergraduate and veterinary school and graduate school. And I didn't really have a strong family support. So I didn't have any financial support from my family, like many of us that want to go into the profession. So as an undergraduate, I worked 2 jobs and took a full course load. And during vet school, I actually waitressed about 20 hours a week. And so it was, it was, I look back at that time and I think, I did what I had to do at the time, but I wouldn't recommend it to anybody else, right? Because I definitely wasn't the top of my class. Not that that's the thing that you have to be in vet school, but I think I missed out on some true learning. And certainly some collegiality with my classmates, because while they were all, socializing and getting rid of some stress on the weekends, I was going to work. And so, but that's okay, right? Because I did what I wanted to do, what I needed to do to get where I wanted to be. I actually went to veterinary school thinking that I was going to be a large animal veterinarian. We didn't live on a farm. We lived on some acreage, but I always liked the variety and I liked the idea of working outside, and kind of being physically active all day long. But that quickly changed, as I started into veterinary school, and I realized that I didn't have a lot of experience. I certainly didn't have a lot of equine experience, but I gravitated towards small animal medicine from there. And so that's where I ended up, focusing on was companion animal, small animal medicine.
And you went into clinical practice. And how did you get recruited to go and do a PhD?
Well, that's a great question. And I was in clinical practice for about a year, and not to speak illy of anybody in the profession, but that year wasn't very good for me. The veterinarian that I was working for, very skilled, very experienced, owned his own practice, but just wasn't what I thought that I wanted in a small animal practice. And so I really struggled then with what I wanted to do. I had my first child in the August after I graduated from veterinary school. So I also had a young child and just dealing with some things. So I happened to be back in the Manhattan area and ran into one of my professors and said, "Hey, gosh, I'm just thinking through some other things." And he said, "You know what? I've got a graduate student position open. Would you be interested?" And of course, my first response was no, because I had just gone through 8 years of college, and I had student loan debt, and I was done. I'm like, I need to work. And he said, just try it. You can enroll as a special student, meaning that you don't have to take classes yet, or you can take one course, but you can just get your toe wet, and see how that goes. And then once I did that, I just fell in love with it. Doing your PhD is different from going to veterinary school from the perspective of your focus down on one area, sort of like, when you decide as a veterinarian to pursue a specialty, right? You really get to focus and learn and do that deep dive down into that specialty area. And so I quickly fell in love with it, and became a full-time graduate student. And so that's how I got, interested into, and that opportunity came my way. I didn't actively seek it. I just had some relationships and, was open enough to say, I think I need to look at something different. And that's how that opportunity came my way. And it ended up that at that very point in time, Hill's Pet Nutrition was thinking about a dental food. Dr. Mark Morris Jr. had approached Hill's with this idea. And Dr. John Heffron, who was one of my co-major professors, had just retired from the ADA. He was a pharmaceutical chemist. He'd gotten a position as a research educator at KU. And then my other co-major professor at K-State was like, "Oh, hey, I've got a new graduate student," right? And so that, it all just happened. And I happened to be in the right place at the right time. But I don't want to attribute it all to just sheer luck, because I think we do that too often. I think, well, it's just lucky, right? But no, you work for what you want. You keep your mind open to opportunity. And that's how, I got into the area of veterinary dentistry and dental research. And so it was amazing how it came together. And I really didn't know what I was doing. I'd never really thought about clinical dentistry. We didn't get much of that in veterinary school when I went to school. And looking back, it's like it was wonderful. It gave me so much opportunity. I had two very strong major professors with very different, approaches, and they were great mentors and good coaches. And it just really helped me develop into the person that I am today.
Oh, wow. I think mentorship is so huge. And I know that you're mentoring a lot of people as well. Speaking of, you probably didn't expect this to be part of your career journey either, is, in your PhD, you're working with the Mark Morris, and you actually, I think they recruit you to go into industry after your PhD. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And thank you for bringing that up, because sure, I didn't know what I was going to do, right? And I didn't know if I would pursue becoming a veterinary dental specialist. I didn't know if I'd go back into practice, but I knew that I loved the research work. I liked the scientific part of that. And so I was very fortunate because, along the way, developing the methodologies to evaluate plaque and calculus in dogs and cats, and working very closely with Hills. I was truly the masked or the blinded, scientist. I knew they were thinking about something, but we went through lots of iterations of different types of products, right? And I was kept very out of the loop, because obviously that was very proprietary to Hill's Pet Nutrition. So yes, I was designing the studies and managing those types of things, and evaluating, plaque and tartar accumulation, but I didn't really know what their end goal was. And I've got a funny story to tell you about that in a little bit. But yeah, then when I was getting close to graduation, they were like, "Hey, we're getting ready now to launch this dental diet that you've been working on and helping develop along the way. And would you be interested in joining the company as a dental scientist?" And of course, I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Again, another sort of dream come true, right? And I always referred to Hills as a bit like a mini university. I worked at the research and development division, surrounded by excellent, nutritionists, veterinary nutritionists, veterinary specialists from different areas, internal medicine, orthopedic surgery, engineers, food scientists. We had an on-site library. I mean, it was just like, wow, how could this get any better, right? And plus, as I shared earlier, I had a high student loan debt. So the opportunity to go into a position at a decent salary that had great benefits that didn't require me to relocate geographically was, yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah. So wait, I'm curious now. What was the story from the
So
finding?
the story was, again, being fairly blinded to what the actual end result for Hills was going to be. I did go to one of their meetings at one time, and I was young and naive, and I walked into the Hills conference room with all the Hills executives and the scientists there with the IMS portfolio in my
Oh
hand.
no.
And because I had gotten that at a conference, and I didn't even put it together that, oh, I'm going to a pet food company that might be a competitor with another pet food company. Just walking in, nobody knew who I was, and there I was with my IMS portfolio taking my notes. So yeah, it was. You realize as you go through life and you have many different opportunities and you work with a variety of different people, just kind of how naive you were in your younger days, and that's why things like this that you're doing are so important, because it helps share with earlier in career veterinarians and veterinary nurses what's out there, what they can do, and how they can pursue those opportunities.
Yeah. And, I know you loved the science so much, but I think it's kind of interesting talking about, just walking in with all these executives and you did a lot of R&D with Hills. But then you also got a very different role, more on the marketing side of things. And I think this is also an area that not only veterinary professionals, but I think people outside of veterinary medicine forget that veterinary professionals can bring some very unique skills to that area of for you, the Hills business. So how did you transfer into the marketing side, and what did you think about that experience?
Yeah, honestly, it was kind of a leap of faith. And the background to that was, I worked in R&D for 10 years with Hills, and I really loved it. But we had launched, prescription diet canine TD, prescription diet feline TD, both science diet canine and feline oral care. Hairball was actually a technology that was built out of the dental research. And so, after a decade of doing all that, we had this product portfolio. And then it was like, okay, well, sort of what's next? And I always share that was sort of my adult lesson. When you work for anybody, right? When their priorities shift, your priorities shift, because you're employed by them. And so I had opportunity to stay in the research area and expand my research to, gastroenterology research and that type of thing. But that was intriguing. And I thought, well, yeah, that could be, that could be really another great step in my scientific career. But at the same time, I was also on a veterinary leadership task force with Hills Pet Nutrition, and I was working alongside veterinarians that worked at the corporate office. And so I'm like, hey, I wonder if that's something, that I would enjoy doing. I've always liked the business side of things, but, you know, I, I was a bit of a scientific snob, to be honest with you. I thought, well, all the real work happens in R&D, right? Marketing, what the heck do people do in marketing, right? And so, but again, I had a good mentor who said, why don't you give it a try? And so I did, again, I always jokingly say I went to the dark side, left R&D and went to the commercial side of the business. But I took that leap. I took a position as an associate manager in marketing. It was a lateral move, across, meaning that there was no, grade increase. It wasn't a promotion. It was an opportunity to try something new and different. And again, it was like, wow, look at all this cool stuff and very important stuff that we do in marketing. We translate the very scientific message to something that's relevant, obviously to pet owners, because we want them to purchase the food, right? You can have the best scientific technology in a food, but if nobody buys it, it's not going to do the company any good. And I got to work with so many different individuals, traditional marketing trained individuals, finance individuals, supply chain team members. It was like there's a whole nother side to a successful business. And I got to understand the very important synergy between those departments, right? You've got to do the research and you want that to be evidence-based and end up producing a product that's important for the health of dogs and cats. But you have to figure out, okay, what's your margin going to be? How are you going to market that? What else might we do with this product? Is it going to be important enough to veterinarians for them to want to recommend it? And so all of those things just really evolved my career growth. My eyes were opened up to a whole nother side of what it takes to be a successful business.
Yes. And did that influence your desire to want to go and get an MBA as well?
It did. It did. I questioned that a lot. I know I've always loved math. Anyway, but I kept thinking, okay, should I get an MBA? Would it be beneficial to me to get a business degree? I did have a good mentor that said, you don't need it to progress, but if you want to do it because it's useful to you or helpful to you, then that would be the right reason to do it. And fortunately, again, working for a corporation, I was in a position managing our veterinary consultation service team, and it was just a good point in my career to go ahead and do the MBA. And I did it through the University of Kansas, so KU, but I actually had to go to their satellite campus in Kansas City for classes. So I specifically chose to do an in-person brick and mortar degree program because I'm a better learner that way. And so I would work until 5:30 or 6, drive to Kansas City an hour and take my classes, which in a compressed curriculum like that, classes would be like 6:15 to 10:30 or 6:30 to 10:30. And because you're on 8-week semesters versus 16-week. And I would get done with my class at 10:30 in Kansas City. And I would drive almost 2 hours home because I lived west of Topeka, where the Hills corporate office was. And then I would get up the next day and go to work. And I tried to take 2 courses every 8-week block so that I could get through it. But I went into it again. I wasn't doing it for that next step in my career. I was doing it because I thought that the value that I would gain from that would make me a better leader, would make me a better employee. And I would learn some things, along the way. And so it was an opportunity. And of course, again, working for corporate, the tuition was paid through the corporate tuition reimbursement program. So I had to obviously pay my personal expenses, my gas and that type of thing, in my books, and then any other fees the university would have. But that was a great opportunity as well. After years of funding my own education, it was nice to have this benefit from the company that I worked for.
Yeah, absolutely. And so since not very many veterinarians go go and get an MBA, what do you feel are some of the biggest things that you learned from that program that you could carry on?
To be honest with you, the finance part of it was the most important thing that I learned, because I've always been good with numbers. I like numbers. I like accounting and that type of thing, but actually looking at the profit and loss statements and understanding what it means to have a profitable margin, understanding your fixed expenses versus your variable expenses, those types of things really helped me understand why certain decisions are made in a business, and that the profit that you make, that's a good thing, no matter where you work as a veterinarian, right? It's good to make a profit because you can invest that back into your business. And so, that's hard, I think, sometimes for veterinarians, because we do get a lot of misunderstanding from our clients sometimes that, if we love animals so much, why do we need to make money? Well, we have to make money to pay for our employees, to pay our employees a good wage, to invest back into, great equipment for the practice and those types of things. And so the financial part of it was the biggest benefit I got from it. But I also focused a lot on HR and leadership. And so just learning a lot of things about organizational management and organizational psychology and those types of things it was a good mix for me.
Yes, I'm fascinated by psychology as well. uh,
Yeah.
but the business mindset of things, I think, is really important. I still remember going, probably even before vet school, honestly, when I was talking to people about wanting to be a veterinarian, was, people would tell me, well, you're not going to do it for the money, right? You were constantly kind of drilled in this, that it was a almost sacrificial, official kind of role that, you're going to just be this broke, but saving every animal every day, kind of thing. And I hope that we are trying to transition that mindset. Yes, we still have a huge heart for our animals, but back to what you said, making money is good. That's a tool and a resource that you can go and do even more help and invest in your people, invest in the clinic to do better medicine. So I do hope that we are trying to shift into a slightly different money mindset. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, I do think it's gotten better in the curriculum for
Mm,
veterinary students as well. So they are more exposed now to business and to managing a practice and those types of things, which I think is really really helpful. And because it is a wonderful thing to own your own practice or be a partner in a practice. But if that's not everybody's thing, that's okay too. But it does help, and it is hard. It's hard when our clients come to us and say, well, obviously you don't love animals, if you're not willing to do this for free. And that's tough. I remember one of my first experiences working with a veterinarian in New York. We had a client come in. I was filling in at the front desk, and the client came in and they wanted their puppy, but they weren't going to pay for it. And I remember the veterinarian saying to me, we will not discharge this puppy until they've paid. And I remember thinking, oh, well, these people, they need their puppy. They want their puppy. Can't they pay later? And he said, trust me, they need to pay up front. And lo and behold, they were adamant they couldn't pay, but they went out and came back in 5 minutes later and paid. And so, and it is hard because we have such a heart and such a compassion for animals, and we certainly don't want any animal to not get the medical attention that's needed, but we can't give away our services. And so,
yeah, absolutely. So you were talking about not everybody has a goal to own their own practice or get into the business side of things. And kind of returning back to your career goal, it sounds like you had a fantastic job. You were loving it. You were doing very well. And now you move on to a university. So what was that transition in from industry and then going into academia?
I thought that it would be a wonderful, easy transition, but the reality is it was challenging for me because of the difference in stress level. And there's research that talks about a certain level of stress is good for you, and if you go from a high level of stress to a very low level of stress, that's a bad thing.
Oh,
And so there's a balance in there, just like everything else. I had worked with Hills for 23 years. I had a wonderful career there, and they're a wonderful company, but I was just ready. I was getting a little bit restless. I wanted to do something different. And again, I had opportunities. I could have taken a different position within the company. But just life in general and the place that we were at, we were ready for something different. And it just happened that Kansas State University at their Olathe campus had a professor of practice position open. And I had always loved teaching, and I loved the idea of being a part of a university. And so I thought that would be fantastic. And it was a very nice position. I really enjoyed my students, but I was teaching graduate students, not veterinary students. And so it was in a master's degree program in biomedical sciences. And so a lot of my students were individuals that were working in industry, in the animal industry of some sort. And some of them had a desire to go to veterinary school. So there was a little bit of that balance, but it's a smaller satellite campus, and it just didn't have enough of that mix of all the things that I liked that really inspire me. And fortunately, I got the opportunity to come and interview for the hospital director position at Purdue. And, again, my first response was, well, we just moved. So, gee, we put all these boundaries on ourselves. So we can't really, move again. We just built a house. So gosh, we can't really leave that. And then that imposter syndrome that steps in all the time to all of us is that hospital director, I've never worked in a teaching hospital since I finished my PhD program. How could I possibly move into a hospital director position? And then, as I thought through that and actually went to ABMA, and I realized I really missed being immersed in the veterinary profession. And so I went back and talked with Kara, with my wife, Kara. And of course, she's my biggest champion, right? She's like, you've got to go do this, you'll love this, you'll be great at it. And I'll support whatever you want to do, even if that meant leaving the house that we built that she was actually very much in love with. And so I came and I interviewed, and the minute I stepped in the doorway of Purdue, I was like, wow, I just being at a college of veterinary medicine, and kind of having that opportunity to do that, take that step in my career was I just knew immediately that if I was fortunate enough to be offered this position, that it would be a yes. And so, I was. When Dean Reed called me, I was a bit stunned, because honestly, when he called, I thought he's going to tell me, that thank you for interviewing, but we've gone a different direction. And when he said that, they'd like to offer me the position, I was just like, wow. I mean, it was just fantastic. And so, I probably said yes almost immediately, and we packed up and we moved here. And so it's been fantastic. There have been a lot of challenges. I joined Purdue in February of 2020, so shortly before we went into the global pandemic. And I knew coming into the position that Purdue was constructing a new hospital complex. And so again, great unknown for me. I'd never been involved in building a small hospital, much less a big footprint of a teaching hospital. And so, but I liked challenges. I liked the idea of the opportunity. I knew I would have a lot to learn, but I also knew that I had leadership skills that would transfer over to the position. And so again, I trusted myself. I had great support from my wife, and we took a chance and moved here.
Hey, thank you for watching Vet Life Reimagined. This is still a growing channel on YouTube, so liking the video, subscribing to the channel, leaving comments, and sharing the show all go a long, long way right now, and it is all seen and appreciated. I've created playlists for you so you can dive in. You can listen to veterinary technicians, veterinarians, veterinary students. You could discover all of that and more if you go to the main page of the Vet Life Reimagined YouTube channel. The link is down below if you need it. Now back to the conversation.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you for talking about the imposter syndrome, because I was listening to a podcast that you did that was right before I think you accepted, or right around the time you accepted. And you talked about that you wondered if you had the right credentials to go into academia, and for someone like myself who admires you so much and sees all the work that you've done, it was a little like, oh wow, so that doesn't go away.
Yeah.
So we're all human, and we all want to do our best, and so sometimes we question that. So I'm glad that you thought a little bit longer and trusted in yourself, and were able to do this. I am also extremely passionate about supporting veterinary students. I believe they are the future of our profession, and so being able to support them is such an important role. So what you do is so important to our profession. And it didn't even click that that was right before the pandemic as well. So what has been your experience, working very closely with vet students, having to lead through hard times like that? I mean, we've never experienced something like that. So what has been your experience through this?
Well, thank you for asking that question, because I think that now that we're sort of post-pandemic, even though we know that COVID is still around and we're still susceptible to the virus, I think we've sort of forgotten all the good stuff and the hard stuff that we did going through the pandemic, because you're right, nobody knew what this would actually look like in real life. And in fact, I taught One Health when I was at K-State, and I remember telling my students, at any moment in time, we could be in a global pandemic, right? And then and we talked about the high level things, but we didn't talk about the nitty gritty low level. How does this affect your life every day? What do you do with working parents who suddenly have to figure out a way for their children to have online education? What do you do at a veterinary school when you work closely together managing cases, but you have to be 6 feet apart? How do you do classwork? How do you have this incredible group of faculty members that are wonderful teachers, but haven't taught online? And so, because there's so many differences, right? And then what do you do? How do you care for your patients? How do you manage your client interactions when everybody's masked and you've got this car side, service going on? And how do you collect revenue when everything looks much different? And so, looking back on it, several things that really helped me was one, one of the things that I love about being in academia is you have a lot of critical thinkers, right? And so everybody was invested into reading the literature and sharing their ideas and collaborating with other universities. What are you guys doing and how do we bring that here? And then working with the team here, right? Because the wonderful thing about leadership is sometimes it can feel very isolating and very lonely, but you've got an incredible team with you, and so you reach out to your experts, to your network, and together you come up with what's the next plan. And the other thing that really helped me was continuously reminding myself and everybody in the hospital that this is new. We're all in this together. We're going to get through this together, but we're going to try things. And if those things don't work, that's okay. We're going to pivot and we're going to try something else, right? Because we didn't know. But that's sometimes a challenge in academia because we want to dot every I, cross every T, and have everything perfect before we do anything. But I had to continuously remind everybody that we've got to be nimble. We've got to be flexible. We have to be compassionate because everybody is going through this differently, uniquely, right? Some of us might have had aging parents that lived with us. Some of us might be immunocompromised or live with immunocompromised individuals. Some of us had young children at home. Schools were shut down. There were all these types of things to deal with. And we just figured it out together. It required a lot of communication. It required the ability to be decisive when certain decisions needed to just be made and to recognize that sometimes unpopular decisions would need to be made, but that's part of being a leader and just going all in as a servant leader. And I'm here for everybody. And the thing that would keep me up at night really was, how do I keep my team safe? Right? That was what I wanted to do. I didn't, it's like, we need to figure this out. We need to figure out how we still deliver our mission. So how we still educate our students, how we still serve the animals that come to us for their care, how we serve our clients, how we serve our referring DVM community. But most importantly, how does my team stay safe? And so that was really important to me. I also brought in some humor. I do the updates as needed. And I'd pull down the funny memes from social media and just like, hey, I remember one time we got some hand sanitizer, and you remember that sometimes supplies were in very high demand. So it was hard to get certain things. And my customer supply manager at the time had sourced some hand sanitizer, but it smelled like tequila. And so, and people were like, you do get this group of people that based out of fear or exhaustion or whatever, sometimes go to the negative side versus the positive side. And so, it was like, oh, this hand sanitizer smells like tequila. So I'm like, hey, this is the feedback I'm getting. The hand sanitizer smells like tequila. Use it, don't drink it. On to the next thing. Because you gotta be, humorous. I recognize that we went, masks on, masks off, masks back on, masks back off. We had some people that didn't want to wear masks at all. We had other people that we got to wear masks all the time. We got to put 10 masks on, right, to be protected. And so you just had to realize that all of that was born from an unknown. None of us knew really what was the right thing to do. There were a variety of different scientific opinions coming in as well. We were all navigating through our own fears of what was going to potentially personally affect us through this pandemic. And so that's where I think in general as a person, but especially in a leadership position, you put on that big hat of empathy and you try to not let the criticisms or sometimes the very aggressive feedback affect you doing the right thing. And that can be hard, right? Because we get worn out too. And so, but you try to stay that course. I used to say, just let's keep our eye on the horizon. Let's, it's one day at a time. We're going to just do what we can do together, and we will get through this. And we did get through it.
Wow. And I also want to acknowledge that not only does it sound like you were leading well, and all those points were amazing and helpful points on leading teams, but you were brand new. So you had to do all of that while also like building trust with everybody because nobody knew you. So on top of that, you were having to establish brand new relationships. So I want to acknowledge I mean, that in itself, had you not had a pandemic, is already can be very challenging to establish a new leadership role and build trust with people. So I want to commend you. Wow, that sounds very hard, but I'm sure, in hindsight, it has made a very strong team at the university, and you guys are unstoppable. I'm sure now.
Well, it between that, I always say that every position in our hospital is critical to the success of what we do. And again, teaching all the way through patient care. And so, but you're right. It was a challenge at first because here I was, right, an executive, not a specialist, coming in to lead a teaching hospital. And yeah, I think from the staff side, there was a lot of trust, but from the faculty side, there was not as much trust. And then going into the pandemic, it was really challenging. And I don't know if you've ever read the book Radical Candor.
Yeah.
But as I think through that, and you think about the conversation based on the trust level and how much you care about somebody, and it kind of pinpointed. I was in that obnoxious aggression, quadrant for a while because the team didn't know who I was and why was I here and what was I going to do, and I didn't have a chance to build that with them. And so, but as we navigated through the pandemic, one of the other things that I did that was very important was I tried to spend time with sections, with the different sections. So actually, blocking out a day to just go, okay, today I'm going to spend the day with soft tissue surgery, and I'm just going to see how their things are going, and that was very, very helpful too. And that's what we need to do, I think, as a leader. We should be down trying to truly understand what our teams are going through, so that we can help provide the solutions for them. And probably my best example of that is staffing here was a challenge. We were already short-staffed. Then our caseload exploded in the pandemic. And so then we felt that short staffing. And of course, then we had people out and those types of things. And so I invested in staffing very heavily. And it's 3.5 years later. And I finally feel like we can breathe. Right? We've been through the major part of the pandemic. We've occupied, we finished the construction of the new hospital complex, and we made the big move, and we occupied, and we've been operating out of the new complex for a year now. And it just feels like, okay, now we can breathe a little bit, and we can really focus on what we love to do.
Mm. Well, as we're kind of running out of time, what is something that is on your mind right now that you would like to kind of impart as wisdom or encouragement to the veterinary profession?
Yeah, I will always say that we are grateful to work in the best profession that there is, and that there are so many opportunities within the profession. There are also a lot of challenges. We're feeling that now as a teaching hospital. We've got different expectations from students, which is a good thing, right? Because we evolve as the years go by, things change. So we're looking at how do we continue to evolve to meet the student educational needs and desires. How do we continue to evolve to meet the needs and desires of our house officers? Everything from wages to what their work-life balance looks like. Not to forget our faculty and our staff, right? Everybody has needs. And so how do you deliver against those needs for the good of people that I serve, but also for the good of the hospital that is a self-funded unit, really. And so we need that revenue to do those good things, to make sure that our staff wages are in a good place, that I can give healthy, merit increases each year, that we can incentivize, startup packages for faculty members and do wellness opportunities for house officers and all of those types of things. So I think having thought through that, my response to that is having that growth mindset to me is the one thing. Well, I'll say the two things, and I think they go hand in hand. I think developing your emotional intelligence and having a growth mindset, I think no matter what you do in life, those are your keys to success. It really doesn't matter how educated you are. It doesn't matter whether your job is 100% good or maybe not so good or a mix like most jobs are, what your family life is like or what your pulls are. If you've got those two things, if you work on those two things, I think that that's just the key to success. Because life is a journey and it is not all good, right? It's a series of ups and downs and ups and downs, and you've got to navigate the downs. Remember what you've been through, right? You've climbed a lot of mountains successfully. You've got some mountains ahead of you, and you're going to climb those just as successfully. And so as I think about the things that have happened in my life and the things that I've had the opportunity to work with others and mentor and coach others, it really is, everybody needs to develop that self-awareness and self-accountability, because life is what we make of it, right? We can't rely on somebody else to make it good for us. But we can make it the best life we can, and we can bring our best self to life every day.
Ooh, that's powerful. Yes. Well, I always like to wrap up with the final 4 questions, just as a fun way to end. And the first question is there something that people may get wrong about you?
Yeah, yes, I'll tell you what people have gotten wrong about me throughout the years is I'm an introvert, like most veterinarians, and that can sometimes come across as being cold or not caring, but I am completely the opposite. I am a very warm person. I care about people deeply, sometimes to my detriment. And I would do anything for my team. I would do anything for my family, sometimes to the detriment of myself, but so I have to watch that as well. But yeah, I used to get the feedback that, oh, we thought you were nice, but kind of a snob. And because I'm not easily conversational, right? And so, but I've worked on that, and I've come to realize that I like engaging with people, but it's not an easy skill, a natural skill, I guess, for me.
Oh, well, no one will ever notice in this interview. So you've been fantastic. The second question is, do you have a hidden skill or interest? And hidden, just maybe not as many people know about.
Well, I really like snakes.
Really?
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
And people probably don't realize that, but I actually just joined a social media group on snake identification. So I've really been enjoying that. I've always liked reptiles in general. So that's one thing. I think the other thing that people don't realize is I really like extreme hobbies, if that's the right word. Like I love the like they call it the sky coaster, where they strap you in and they take you up about 300 feet and then pull a ripcord and you just sort of fly down. I've done sort of an extreme, not a typical bungee jump type of thing, but you're strapped into it like a circular disc thing, and then it is a bungee thing. So those types of roller coasters, those kinds of things, I really enjoy those types of things.
Oh, wow. Respect. I am not. Is Kara too, or does she watch?
Oh no, oh no. She watches from a distance. She carries the stuff, as she would say. And sometimes it makes her a little nervous because she's worried that I may not actually get off the thing.
That's so funny. The third question is, do you have anything that's still on your bucket list that you would like to do? You've done a lot, but
Well, interestingly, I've done a lot with my career, but I've always also really focused on my family life and personal hobbies and those types of things. So I honestly, I really love my work. And I love my pets. I love my wife. I love my family. And so you just mix all that in, right? I remember somebody once asking me, so what do you do as a hobby? I'm like, well, I go to Walmart and I go to the kids' sports things, but that's okay because that is my life. But we have recently stepped into the world of RV glamping, and we really do like that. And so we do look forward to exploring more of the United States through those experiences. And yeah.
Yeah, well, and that kind of back to what you said, kind of wraps it all. You can put the kids and the pets in the RV and go, and
That's
it's
it,
all.
exactly.
I like that. And finally, the last question is, what is something you are most grateful for?
Oh gosh, there are so many things, but I think I'm most grateful just for the opportunity to experience life in so many wonderful ways, right? And so I am really grateful that I have Kara in my life. She really is the light of my life, the love of my life, and she is the one that gives me the courage and the support to try different things and do different things. And I'm very grateful for my entire family. We've got 3 wonderful children, 3 going on 4 grandchildren, and it's just, again, I think life is what you make of it. Just experiencing that and letting yourself do different things, and not putting all the boundaries on your life that I have to do this, or I have to look like this, or I have to have this kind of a job, and just allow yourself. I'm just grateful for that opportunity to just enjoy my life.
This has been the Vet Life Reimagined podcast. Whether you are listening or watching on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Please make sure you are subscribed to catch all these amazing people in our profession. Also, send this episode to someone you think who would appreciate it. Have a recommendation for someone who would be a good guest? Please reach out on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. There aren't that many Dr. Sprinkles. Until next time, Vet Lifers.